Let me know when we're all started.
We are all started.
All right. Do you want to banter a bit, or you want to just get right into it?
I don't have anything fun to say. It's
I
just
have
the
to
two
tweet
of
the
us. It
show.
feels so dark and quiet without
No, it feels
Georgia.
awesome. It feels like we're finally not being kept down.
Well, when you and Georgia are alone, you're kind of the bad boys of the iMore show. So I think I'm going to make you be the good boy this time.
All right. So what do we? I'm just going to retweet this. Chatting about the October event. Pads, Max, bagel, pizza emoji. You know, the important stuff. Going yes. And yes, I do obnoxiously speak out loud when I type.
I do that too.
Where's the, how come it won't give me the link? Copy link. Why open link? Copy. God, this thing is the worst. Everything's the worst today, Lori. That's just the way I feel.
Everything is the worst most days.
I have tutored the show. The show has successfully been tutored.
Cool. I also tutored from the iMore show, so we're good.
Tutored.
We've been tutored.
Tutored. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
Yes. It is Friday, October 19, 2018. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we're going to talk about Apple's October event set for the 30th of this very month in Brooklyn, New York. And maybe some iPads, some Macs, some bagel emoji, some pizza emoji, you know, just the important stuff, because this is the iMore Show. Joining me this week, we have Lori Gill, the mother of dragons and the queen of rock. How are you, Lori?
I'm good, thanks very much. And let me start this episode off by saying I apologize for any coughing fits that I may or may not have. I'm getting over a cold and the cough is lingering. I'll try not to blast everybody's ear with any coughs, but they might come up unnaturally, or actually, I guess naturally, but unfortunately. So let me just,
have you not treated it with enough whiskey yet?
I have probably had too much whiskey, and that might be why.
There we go. Oh, well, Lori, I hope you feel better.
Thank you. I'm actually on the mend. It's just the lingering cough, so we're good.
Micah Sargent is stuck in traffic. He said he is stuck in stop and go traffic. I just picture him behind the wheel, almost like a Looney Tunes cartoon, just behind the wheel of a tiny, tiny little car that's just going down the street. I think that's about right.
Yeah.
And Georgia had some last minute shenaniganizing to do. She did not get up early enough to get all her shenanigans in for the day.
I think she just went out and bought the iPhone, or pre-ordered the iPhone XR and just slept in. What
color do you think she would have gotten? Psychological profiling.
I'm thinking coral.
Bart Simpson yellow?
No, because I feel like
flash red.
I think coral matches her hair in a good way. You know, like it complements her. So I think she would have, if she were to buy the XR, she would buy the coral, and that's my guess.
Which color would you have gotten, Lori Gill?
You know, I keep going back and forth. That red is so pretty, but weirdly, I really like that banana yellow color. And like I've said it before that I hate yellow, but for some reason on that phone, it looks really good. You've seen the yellow in person, face to face, right?
It's iMore yellow. You know, what could be better than that?
Maybe my love of yellow has developed because I'm so used to the iMore website being in yellow now, so my brain is just more comfortable with the color.
Yeah, you got Vector orange, iMore yellow. That's just how these things work.
I mean, basically, they're and old iMore blue. So basically,
no
Apple
Android
is
Central green. They got new pixels though. They're fine.
They're fine.
So invitations went out, Lori. I think like 400. I lost count. Some people have like 300 and something. I think it's going to end up being over 400 unique artistic renderings of the Apple logo sent to individual invitees in the form of an invitation for October 30th, an event in Brooklyn, which I was not expecting.
So your invitation looks different than every other person that was invited. That's fantastic. I knew there was a bunch of different ones, but I didn't realize that each one was individually different.
So far, I'm going to send you this tweet. I'll put it in the show notes, but there's this tweet that I almost tried to touchscreen my Mac. How embarrassing for me at Apple. because I'm not using an iPad. A CNN reporter put together so far like 371, but I think there's more. There is.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And all different artistic styles, from cartoon to classical, from Pollock-esque to Picasso-esque, just about anything you can imagine. There's even like, I think, a SpongeBob one or something like that in there.
So normally you can kind of just laugh at this idea of using the graphic of an Apple event to kind of like predict what you think is going to come. We have like the iPhone event. It was the circle. So everybody was saying, I'm sure in jest, is it going to be a round iPhone? I even had the idea that maybe it was representative of like a Qi charger, what that would look like.
It was a bagel. It was clearly the first attempt at a bagel emoji. So yeah, you're ready.
I know, you can't make me laugh. It's going to make me cough. Okay. But I think in this case, we legitimately can use this graphic design as a representative of what we're going to expect.
We're going to expect art, and it's being held at a music and art institute. I forget what I gotta look it up now, but it's a famous place in Brooklyn. Because I don't live in Brooklyn, I have no freaking idea what it is, but I will look it up. But it is a famous place for music and or arts, which is, I mean, iPads, I get it. Macs, I mean, a lot of professionals use them for that, but this was more of an entry level. I don't know. I'm still confused. I just think Apple's like, let's make some awesome art, yo, and then just send them out.
Yeah, and iPad Pro is very specifically geared toward artists. So
Brooklyn Academy of Music.
The Brooklyn Academy of Music.
So we have artistic, like visually artistic invitations to go to a music place.
So that being said, clearly the invitations are heavily weighted in art. But yes, the place it's being held is a music hall. What yes, I'm wondering, and this is something that hasn't really been touched on or talked about, what's the most pro musical Mac out there? The Mac Pro that we haven't heard anything about.
We got them already. We got them in July, Lori.
The
Mac Pro, the big one?
Yeah,
like
the Mac Pro. Yeah. So is there even the slightest chance that that's going to be the big secret, is that they're holding it at a music hall? My guess is they're going to have an orchestra. These are just fantasies that I'm coming up with. And then they're going to present us the Mac Pro and maybe even have some kind of like demo of recording that live orchestra. That's what I'm envisioning. That's what, if I was like,
I don't think the Mac Pro, the last time we checked in with them, I think Matthew Panzarino went over there, they said 2019, but I think you might be exactly right. But instead of with a Pro, maybe with a Mini?
Yeah. So there, I watched your preview today. We'll link that in the show notes. And one of the things that you had talked about was this idea that there might be a Pro model Mac Mini. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, Apple originally introduced the Mac Mini back in 2005, I believe. Steve Jobs introduced it as, just the switcher Mac. You got this little Mac. It was the smallest, lightest, least bells and whistles, no screen like a laptop, nothing fancy, that you would bring your own display, keyboard, and mouse to, and it was meant to be entry level. It was meant to be a switcher's Mac. And over time, Apple redesigned it, of course. It went to being unibody and aluminum. And at the height of the Mac Mini prowess, there was a model in 2012 that had 2 1 terabyte drives, 2 terabytes of storage, and a quad core processor. And pros loved that, especially people who used it in server rooms, or people like Mac Mini Colo, which is now merging with Mac Stadium. They just loved the crap out of that Mac. And then Apple, the next 2 years later, Apple took it away. They dropped the price by $100. It had gone up slightly from $499 to $599, went back down to $499, but they also got rid of the 2 terabyte option and the quad core option, and it was decidedly less pro. And the rumor now is that it is going to be maybe more of a pro machine, but maybe at least a pro SKU. But the idea is that a lot of the switchers have switched. That customer doesn't really exist anymore. There's someone who's new to a Mac is going to go towards the MacBook because it includes the screen, includes the trackpad, includes the keyboard. And not the Mac Mini, but the Mac Mini is still beloved by pros, people who use it in server or media rooms, or for serving, or for media, or for development, all of those things. And so maybe using it in production pipelines for music and art, graphic design would makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, so the Mac Mini Pro, let's call it. Don't go into the Apple Store and request that until we know for sure the name of it. But let's just call it that for now. Mac Mini Pro could potentially be a pro production device that musicians or musical engineers, like recording artists and things like that, could potentially use to create their music on, which would make sense for why this Apple event is happening in a music hall.
So you're I'm going to throw it back at you real quick. You're actually the musician here. Like, do you actually use Macs in your recording or your stage performances?
No, absolutely not in a live performance. Okay. I don't. The kind of music that I play doesn't require any kind of electronical equipment. But I know a couple people who do use Mac laptops in live performances, and everyone that I know that has a recording studio, that owns a recording studio, they record on Mac, but they record on big giant Macs. And actually most of them are still running very old versions because they don't want to deal with the upgrade process, which is, it's kind of a frustrating thing for them because there's so many great new things for, like the iMac Pro, for example, is a great product for a friend of mine who has an old Mac Pro. And he's just not willing to upgrade to the iMac Pro because he still has all these very old legacy software programs on it that he doesn't want to have to try to, he doesn't want to try to have to like switch that over. But we're getting to the point now where legacy software is actually becoming more and more obsolete. So we're definitely seeing this kind of crossroads where recording artists, and by that I don't mean musician recording artists, I can't think of a better name to use, like recording engineers. They are coming to that point where they have to upgrade their hardware because they have to upgrade their software. You know, they're kind of getting to that point now. So a Mac Mini would be, I think, a really good opportunity. I know so little about what a Mac Mini is and what a Mac Mini does that I'm only making this suggestion on an assumption of what a Mac Mini really is. But I would imagine that if you can put the software programs on that Mac Mini that you can put on a standard Mac, it's an excellent replacement that doesn't cost as much money, and even a good transition device to get you from your 6-year-old or 7-year-old Mac Pro and into a newer device, possibly even helping you transition to the new Mac Pro that will come out in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Lindsay, who joins me almost every week for Mac Break Weekly, you've been on with him plenty of times too. He talks about how it's the glue in his production pipeline, and he just has dozens of them everywhere doing really small but important tasks. They don't, you dial into them. You don't need, not dial in. God, I'm old. You just VNC into them, and you can do, or Apple Remote Desktop into them. You can do anything you need, and they're small, they're light, they fit in almost anywhere, and they can do all these tasks for you. So it's going to be super interesting to see. I think between that and if we get the rumors of the new MacBook, I don't know if it's going to be called MacBook Air, but it's going to effectively replace the MacBook Air at the under $1,000 price point. And you'll have like these entry-level options where if you need just a Mac for your server room or production or whatever, get the Mac Mini. But if you actually, like, you're a student or you want like a light laptop to take around with you, you don't need something heavy, but you want something that's Mac, you'll be able to get that new MacBook Air, and that'll do you right.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a minute too. We're hearing rumors that it's going to be a replacement for the MacBook Air, but that it might actually be more like a MacBook. Do you think that means that Apple's going to sunset the MacBook or the MacBook Air, or it's going to just be a hybrid and we will no longer have these two separate categories of MacBook? It'll just be one. It'll be, well, it would be two because it would be MacBook and MacBook Pro, but MacBook would actually be more like MacBook Air.
It's interesting because the MacBook was, I mean, myself included, everybody thought that the MacBook would be like the Air, where it came out originally as sort of the super expensive, because the technology at the time was super expensive, executive jet setter, traveler Mac, where if you could afford it, you could get a light Mac that would still do everything you needed it to do. But then over time, they made the second version of it. The price came down. The price came down. It hit under $1,000. I think $800 for the 11-inch version before they killed it. And this new MacBook, everyone, myself included, thought it would be the same thing. Come out at a high price because of things like terraced batteries and the way they were doing the circuit board was super expensive, but that over time it would come down. But apparently that computer just never got that much cheaper to make. And so it stayed as sort of this executive, or people jokingly call it the manager book, because it's light and you don't have to do real work on it. But you can't bring that down in price. So I think this will definitely replace the Air. I don't know if it'll replace the MacBook, because they might still want that computer for like the person who sees himself as a startup person or executive person who just wants an ultralight Mac to travel, but doesn't want like an entry-level Mac. Although I think kill that Core M processor just to watch it die at this point. Not a fan, Intel.
Yeah. So then what does that mean is going to happen to the Air?
I think the Air just goes away, because I mean they've done very little with that over time. The Air goes away. We have this new MacBook, whatever it is, and then even odds. What does Aaron Sorkin say? 6 and 5, and pick them on whether it survives or not.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's necessary. I think it's a nice to have, not a must have. And then we have the MacBook Pro. What I'm also interested in though is the non-touch bar MacBook Pro, because that did not get updated in July. So does that get replaced by this? Does that just get updated in a press release? I don't know.
Oh, you're right. I mean, it needs the update, but it's not. The update would be such a small, incremental change that it wouldn't warrant an entire press
like
event,
a slide or something.
Yeah. But will they say it at the event?
By the way,
will they drop that in?
Yeah, maybe like, by the way, we also updated the non-touch bar MacBook Pro with 2 ports to Coffee Lake. And then people will be like, yawn.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't they just do it back then?
Or they won't even tell us, and it'll just show up in the list of press announcements. It'll be like a footnote, like the clear case that's coming for the 10R, which, by the way, I didn't see that on the US accessory release. So if it's outside of the US, I haven't even heard about it.
I pre-ordered last night, and I didn't see any cases from Apple available to purchase yet.
Yeah, so I wonder what that was in the. Yeah, I think it would be pretty exciting to. I'm totally taking us off track again, but I think it would be really great to see a clear case from Apple. I think that for me personally, that's one of my favorite types of cases, is one that's clear, so that it's thin and it doesn't take up much bulk on your phone, but it lets the phone show off its beauty. And Apple coming up with one that will give you the exact presentation you want, the color that you're hoping to show off to everybody, but the protection and the design that Apple creates. So I hope it happens. I hope we do get to see it.
Way better than those iPhone 5C whole cases.
Yeah. I mean, that was cute for however many years ago that was. 5 years ago?
But it showed only part of the word iPhone on the back, which was so weird.
Yeah, and it's still covering the phone. And the cases that the silicone and leather cases that Apple make now, they're gorgeous, but they're covering the phone. So a clear case, I think, is the best way for them to be able to
I have a brown one on my 10S right now, and it looks great. It looks like Indiana Jones, but it's still covering up what Johnny Ive intended to be nature.
Right, and I've got a Peel clear case, which, by the way, I have these ugly strips on the back so that I can turn it into a magnet. But look at how gorgeous. You could still see the beauty of my phone, even in a case, because I have this very thin Peel case on it. So
do you have BB-8 on your wallpaper, Lori Gill?
I do.
Okay, so good.
I love my BB-8.
So good. So good. Yeah. So the only question is, will the clear case be silicone or leather? Ha ha.
If they can make actually, I think I'd be a little bit grossed out by a clear leather case.
Zombie skin. It's 100% natural zombie skin.
Oh, gross.
There's your show title, Jim. Yeah. So the other thing, of course, is the iPads Pro. Apple updated the 9.7-inch regular iPad back in March, and they gave it pencil support. So they're going to have to do something to elevate the MacBook Pro. And the coolest feature, I mean, edge to edge, not like the iPhone with a notch, but more like the Apple Watch where it just goes around the edges. So we'd have one that stayed the same size, but the screen got bigger, so 11 inches, and one where the screen stayed the same size, but the casing shrinks, and that'll still be 12.9 inches, but there won't be so much casing around it. And then it's got this really weird smart connector on the back that looks like a teardrop shaped smart connector. And some people thought, oh my God, we're gonna have to deal with portrait keyboards again. But then, someone said, you can maybe stick the pencil there to charge. I don't know. It's so mysterious to me.
I know. This is the best time of the year, Renee, when we get to talk about the rumors of the designs that have come out and kind of like imagine what it's really going to look like, and even talk about our wish list for that. And so I love this time. I love that we get to do this. I think so. I have the 9.7-inch iPad Pro and the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. And I prefer the 12.9-inch. I didn't think I would because it is so big that I kind of get to this point where, well, I might as well just use my MacBook Pro because it's the same size. It's almost literally the same size. But it turns out it's great for so many different things that a MacBook Pro or a MacBook or any laptop aren't good for. So I love the size of 12.9. How big would that screen be if it was bezel-less? I mean, is that?
Well, it's going to be the same. So the big one stays the same. The screen size stays the same. You get less casing, so it's slightly more portable. It's the smaller one that gets bigger screen.
Yes. So the casing. So in other words, your 12.9-inch iPad Pro case will not fit the new Pro if this is true, because the size of the machine itself is going to be smaller, which makes sense.
And if they change the design, then all bets are off. Like we'll have to, maybe I'll have a bigger screen, but also like there was rumors it's going to have like a chamfered edge the way the iPhone 5 did. So I mean, who knows? And
let me just put my hat in that bucket. I would love that. I love that flat edge design. I think it's great. And I wish that the iPhones were like that. I would love to see that on an iPad. I think that's real classy. And I would love to see it. That's probably not going to be the case, though. That doesn't seem like
Apple.
You heard me. That doesn't seem the direction that Apple would go, though. I think they're more likely to try to make all of their products kind of in line with each other. So reverting to the flat edge of an iPad when they've moved to the rounded edge of the iPhone for years now, doesn't seem to make sense. But I sure would like to.
See, but they mess with us. Like there's things that the industrial design department does deliberately to mess with us. It's like they move the power button to the top of the iPhone, but leave it on the side on the iPad, just so that you always hit the volume before you hit the. I mean, it's one thing after another with them, and you think you're finally going to have unified design language, like. The iPod Touch went to the previous design, and then the iPad Mini, and then the regular iPad, and then the phones looked like they were gonna, and then the new iPhone comes out and everything's different again, and then the watch followed, and like they could just be like, oh, you think everything's gonna be unified? Nah. And they'll do like the next generation of design language.
Yep. And this actually the newest iPad, if there's any time to completely change the design of it, it's when they're going to completely change the size of it. So why not go crazy and do something completely different? Definitely.
We'll see.
I look forward to that. I'm excited. So what about Face ID on iPad Pro?
Yes, there will be Face ID, but because they're not going to get rid of the bezels because you have to hold the iPad differently than a phone, there'll be enough room to have the true depth array without having to make a notch. Question is, do they get rid of the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack just to be a jerk about it? Because Google is putting out the Pixel Slate. They got rid of the jack, and previous boss of mine, Dieter Bohn, now at The Verge, was asking about it, and they're like, "Well, phones did it, so meh." Is that going to be Apple's response, or are they going to say "Courage Part 2"? I mean.
Well, so just like you're saying, the design team throws us for a loop every single time. So. If you follow
iPhone jacks,
if you follow that train of thought, they're going to keep the iPhone jack just to mess with us. But since they got rid of the 3.5 millimeter jack on the iPhone, and a lot of people that I knew were complaining about that and what a bad idea that was. I knew right then and there that the reason they did that is that we were moving to digital music, and we were using analog headphones to listen to digital music. And what they were doing is they were upgrading the cable that you plug into the phone to a digital signal so that you're getting that clearer digital signal. And that makes the most sense in a digital world. So that being said, upgrading the iPad Pro or any of the iPad line to no 3.5 millimeter jack makes so much sense, because they're getting rid of that analog ideology that we were using with tapes and record players. And they're saying, we're all digital now, so get your digital headphones out. This makes the most sense going forward. And I think at this point, so much is now non 3.5 millimeter that most people are going to be much more willing to accept that than they were before. And there's only a handful of situations under which you would need to use your headphones when using your iPad, like watching movies or TV shows, or dealing with musical recordings in one way or another, whether you're listening to music or actually, programming your music or recording with your iPad or something like that. So the average person is significantly less likely to be using headphones with their iPad than they would with their iPhones. So the transition, I think, makes a lot of sense if they're going to do that this year.
Yeah, I mean, I love it this time of year, like you said, because this kind of season where we are transitioning, where some products have clearly made the leap to things like no bezels, and others are on the verge, and we get to sort of imagine, like, will they, won't they? Will they, won't they? It's sort of like watching like The Bachelor for products. It's amazing.
I was going to say Friends.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, but they were on a break. So there is some breaking news. Speaking of breaks,
oh boy,
Lori Gill, this is actually really big. It's a totally different topic, but it's really big. Tim Cook has called on Bloomberg to retract their Chinese hardware.
This must be happening right now.
Yeah, literally right now. There is no truth in their story about Apple, Cook told BuzzFeed in a phone interview. And this is what BuzzFeed is saying. This is an extraordinary statement from Cook and Apple. The company has never previously publicly, though it may have done so privately, called for the retraction of a news story, even in cases where the stories have had major errors. And they link to a couple CNET and Wall Street Journal stories about iPhone 10 sales, or were just demonstrably false, such as the American Life episode that was shown to be fabricated. So Bloomberg's comment was that Bloomberg Business Week's investigation is a result of more than a year of reporting, during which we conducted more than 100 interviews. 17 individual sources, including government officials and insiders at the company, confirmed the manipulation of hardware and other elements of the attack. We also published 3 companies' full statement. So they're not saying they're right. They're just saying they spoke to a lot of people, which is interesting. But again, like this is so fascinating, because we've never seen this happen before.
I know. It's been just the most unusual story to come out for many years, not because of the content of the story, but because of the reaction of both the media outlet and the companies that are saying that it's wrong. And Apple's public admonishment of this article is even more like serious, and it's pretty that's pretty crazy. So they're asking Bloomberg to just redact it entirely. They're asking them to just say,
yeah. So that's not like Apple asking for it is not is unprecedented. This American Life, for those who didn't know it, we've discovered that one of our most popular episodes contained numerous fabrications. This week, we detailed the errors in Mike Daisy's story about visiting Foxconn, which makes iPads and other products for Apple in China. So basically, it was an expose of Apple's supply chain, and turned out to have numerous inaccuracies. And This American Life posted a retraction for it. Bloomberg is not posting a retraction. What's also interesting is like why Apple is fighting so hard on this story. Often they just ignore these things. Like the iPhone 10, saying the iPhone 10 wasn't selling had a detrimental effect on their stock, and Apple said nothing. And this is a security story, and Apple is fighting it tooth and nail, and that in itself is fascinating.
That actually leads me to segue into the next part of the story that I think that they're probably very closely related, which is Apple's big update to its privacy portal. This just happened yesterday or the day before, including the ability for people in the US to download a copy of their data report. Apple, especially in the past year or two, have been very vocal about privacy protection and about security. And this article, even though it's not about you or my individual privacy, it is about a break in the chain of privacy and security. And so it could be that Apple is being so forceful about it because they're on this campaign right now to prove that they are the better company of all of the phone making companies because of how much they work to protect our privacy. And this doing this kind of like the Bloomberg report sort of breaks that campaign that they're trying to show us. And it could be that they're trying to say, you can't, this is 100% wrong, and you really have to stop talking about it, and you have to, admit that you did something wrong here, so that we can kind of rest on our laurels that we are, people know and believe us that we are working very hard to protect their security and privacy.
Yeah, I mean, so Apple launched that new site, I think it was a year or so ago, and this isn't a new privacy site. This is a huge expansion of the privacy site where it goes more broadly, explains many more things than it did previously, but also goes deeper and explains more about all of the individual things. And it really is Apple doubling, tripling, quadrupling. Like the 3 dimensions are hard. If you go wider and deeper, is that quadrupling? like pixel cubes? I don't know. But anyways, they're taking that super seriously, and they're taking everything. Like those privacy engineers are in there from the beginning. It's not like, oh, the product's done, how do we make it private? Oh, we'll stick a piece of tape on front of it, lols. That product is like, someone has an idea for a product. If they don't have the idea of how to make it private, it does not go any further than an idea. And it's really meritorious, especially when you have so much money being made on so much personal data. That Apple is, conscientiously, consistently, deliberately not taking any of that, and in fact fighting back and making it harder for other people. Like Craig Federighi, we're going to take those social buttons and shut them down. It's amazing, and maybe you're right. Maybe it's sort of they see this as completely counterintuitive of the efforts they're putting into the privacy.
Mm-hmm. And even the Bloomberg article clarified it from their point of view, which now we can't even trust even what they've said about this stuff. But they did say that Apple immediately resolved the issue, and that isn't even anything to worry about or consider anymore. But even that is not enough for Apple to back down and say, well, they didn't get their information correct, but at least they put in it that we made the right changes. They're saying, no, this never happened. Stop it. Yeah. We are super secure. We would never let this happen. We would never allow, this kind of thing to take place in our organization. So you're totally wrong. We're totally, protecting everybody's security and privacy and stuff. It's interesting, but I do believe that one of the reasons that they're probably, if not the reason that they're going so hard against Bloomberg on this, is that they are trying to position themselves in the industry as the leader in privacy and protection, because what else makes them stand out? There are so many phone manufacturers now that make fantastic phones. And the one place that Apple stands out above everybody else is its ability to secure your data and your privacy. And that should be the reason that they're going, that should be the platform that they stand on to stand out from the rest of the phone manufacturers. And it makes the most sense. So it'd be like, think of the thing that is most important to you and, about yourself. And then one person saying something that's completely false about that one thing that's the most important to you. Like for me, let's say it's, playing music in a band, and, somebody says something like, well, Lori doesn't write her own music, somebody else writes it. And I would be furious that thought would even go out. And I would want to defend that to every person that I saw, so that, that falsity wouldn't be even thought of to other people, so that they would know that I do write my own songs. It's a silly analogy, but that's kind of what I'm thinking of about, making the comparisons.
Yeah, I mean, so now that you say that, what I'm thinking is Bloomberg heard a story, and that story might have been single sourced, and they might have put a lot of their own spin on it. And then everyone else they spoke to was to not to find out what happened, but to corroborate, to find out how it could have happened. To sort of, it really is sort of like Red Team 3 on the newsroom show, where you think you know something and people are telling you something that's completely different, but you're interpreting it through the lens of what you think you know. And so it sounds like that general is telling you about the operation. He's telling you about a completely different operation, but you see enough parallels that you think it's corroborating your story, and it just builds up, and you want it so badly that you're sort of trapped in your own narrative, and you can't get out of it. And Apple's probably offended both by the story and the shitty quality of the reporting at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I wish that I had this information in front of me. I do remember sometime last week, or maybe even the week before, there was one person who had been interviewed, and they were one of the sources that were, being referenced in this article. And that person was saying, I read this article and thought, well, I didn't tell them that this happened. They asked me some questions, some what if questions, and I gave them some what if answers. And it sounds like they used that information, scenario specific, in this article to say that this actually happened, and it didn't. This was just a scenario that I was answering what ifs for. So, kind of leaning on what you're saying, that the writers may have accidentally put on the blinders and saw what they wanted to see. They could have also sort of accidentally gleaned some scenario information, some what if information, and sort of like funneled it into reality, instead of making the separation between the two of what could happen versus the information facts did happen.
Yeah, no, I think I think ultimately that might be what gets shown. And it hopefully, I mean, again, media is being assailed, and I don't want to take any part in the attacks on media, because quite often they're incredibly manipulative. But at the same time, everyone in media has to do their job so much better now because of the climate that we're in, and we just can't afford BS getting through. Like, it's no good for anybody. It's not enough to be kind of sort of sure. You gotta, like Woodward and Bernstein, nail it. And I hope, I hope Bloomberg, if this is what it looks like, I hope Bloomberg stops being dragged behind it and starts running real fast to get ahead of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Lori, should we talk about something that we love, that we can't get enough of?
I always love talking about something that I love. What is the thing that you love right now?
Right now, I love our friends at Thrifter. And yes, I'm only capable of saying it like Mark Hamill. Oh, Holly, Mr. J, Thrifter. It's this website that you go to, and they have it in the US, they have it in the UK, they have it in Canada now. And it gives you just the best deals. And it's so annoying to have to go around the web, try to find, are these discs, just things that you want. You have no idea if these are good prices, bad prices, things you may not have even known that you need. But suddenly, I do need those lightsaber Hue light holders. I mean, there's just so many things out there, and there's so much of it, and no one has time to sort through it except for the folks at Thrifter. And that's what they do.
Did you actually see Hue?
No.
Okay.
I'm trying to impose my will on them. I know I made all these people, so I apologize. I was just trying to think of the most wonderful thing I could think of. But yeah, no, they personally curate deals. That's what they do. And if you go to Thrifter, have you gone to thrifter.com today, Lori?
I'm looking at it right now, wishing that I hadn't.
Is there anything that appeals to you?
There sure is. There's so many. But today I'm going to talk about the life-size Porg from Star Wars Lego set.
Oh God.
I know, it's so cute. So it's a Lego set, normally $70, and you can get it right now for $56. And for all of you Lego fans, Star Wars fans, it's a Porg, it's Legos, it's adorable.
Okay, I'm glad Georgia's not on the show, because she would be ordering it immediately, probably with one of our credit cards. And maybe you don't like that deal, but there's going to be a deal you do like. And, you don't want to buy a lot, but when there are things you want to get, you do want to save as much money as you can. So just go to thrifter.com. And here's a pro tip, a secret: sign up for the newsletter, because that way you don't even have to remember to check the site. They will take all the already curated deals and curate it, like even like the best of the best of the best of the best, and deliver them right into your inbox, hot and smoking for you to enjoy.
Or to waste all your money, spend all your money on.
Spend all your money. Absolutely. Thrifter.com, Thrifter for our friends. And thank you so much for sponsoring the show.
Thank you.
I love them, Lori.
I know. It's dangerous, honestly. I try to avoid visiting that site.
It hurts so good.
Because it's, you know what, it's the best around the holidays. I save so much money on presents for people by going to Thrifter first, but any other time of the year, it's dangerous for me because I don't need half of the stuff that I see, but it's awesome and it's discounted.
So good.
So good. Too good. So you said you got up in the middle of the night. Actually, your time, it would be 3 a.m. and pre-ordered the iPhone XR.
Imagine that Georgia did that. I forgot. See, I sometimes forget that Friday at 3 a.m. is like the morning of Friday. I thought it was actually tomorrow night.
Oh, no, so you didn't.
I got distracted making a video yesterday and lost track of time. And then I woke up this morning and went, oh, I wonder if I have to stay up till 3 a.m. for the, oh no, Friday 3 orders were this morning. So I went and hoped there was some left. And luckily I did manage to grab one.
Yeah, so I wasn't planning on it. I still haven't pre-ordered an iPhone XR, and I got up at 7 and I just wanted to check, and they were still available with the shipping date and of October 26th. Now, that doesn't mean anything other than the pre-order isn't hyped up, and I think there's going to be, we're going to see analysts saying things like the iPhone XR was a bust and it's, Apple shouldn't have put it out. That's not necessarily going to be true. I think there's a lot of hype around the brand new iPhone, and this year it would have been the XS and the XS Max. So a lot of people jumped on the XS and XS Max right out of the gate. I think with the XR, it's going to be a little bit more of a slow burn, that there's going to be a lot of people getting the XR that they're not pre-order fanatics. They didn't need it the night of. They don't need it on day one. And so I think even though it didn't immediately go to 2 weeks out and then a month out by the time people got up first thing this morning, I think it's still going to be a major seller, especially outside of the US and especially in China. I think there was an article not that long ago about the iPhones, or sorry, non-iPhones. So Android devices in China had a very slow quarter, and there was kind of not assumptions, but sort of predictions that it's because there's a lot of people waiting around for the XR, because that's going to be their big phone purchase this year. So.
Yeah, so it's going to be so interesting because Apple's positioned it where the XR has almost every feature you need, like including the new processor, but not every feature you may want, like the double camera or the OLED or the gigabit Ethernet. But if you need those features but don't want the extra ones, you can save several $100. But if you want those extra features, it'll cost you a few extra $100. And I think a lot of people are going to have to make a lot of choices.
I don't even think it's that. I think the XR is, for most people, the best phone. They don't need the 3-4 things if you count, because the XR does not support 3D touch, correct?
It has haptic touch, which I really regret not spending more time with at the event. It was good enough to fool me. Like when I opened up the home screen and tapped on the buttons and stuff, it was good enough like that I don't mean to say this to be mean, but like haptics on Android are garbage, like hot garbage. And I've been using a Pixel for a while because I wanted to see what Pi was like. And I was just used to really crappy haptics, and like really good haptics on my iPhone were just normal. So with this, I don't remember if they were bad enough that I noticed. I don't think so though. They weren't so bad that I noticed. And putting, and that to me, I want to spend more time with that and sort of find it out. I have a guess, I put it up on Twitter, that because of the new display, like Apple had to make it go edge to edge, and it required a new kind of LCD display with a new kind of backlight. And 3D touch on LCD phones used the deformation of the glass as measured by the backlights to detect the pressure. And if those backlights have changed, that system may no longer work. And I know for the OLED phones, they had to make a whole new touch layer, but that's expensive. So not putting that on the 10R makes a lot of sense. But Apple's got really good taptics. And so it's not going to be 3D touch, but will it fool me in the most important? I got so many questions, Lori Gill.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what you're saying is that the 10R, though it doesn't have the physical 3D touch physicality of 3D touch, it will have the same reaction as 3D touch. In other words, you're long pressing instead of force pressing.
Not really. So like on the home screen, if you press the flashlight or the camera, as far as I remember, there was like a chunk. And it felt like, again, it was enough that I didn't stop to think about it. So it was probably pretty good. And again, I only had a few minutes, so I regret not being able to do more with this. But I didn't get a chance to try. And no one's really talked about things like I don't know if it has peak and pop. It may not. It may not have all because that requires you to measure precise position and force of press. And I don't know if it does that. So it might only have it in a few places.
Right. But, the iPhone 5S is the most recent phone without 3D touch. And though I haven't been using it as much as I used to before I got the 10, in where it counts, you long press instead of force press, and it gives you the same stuff. It doesn't have peak and pop, but that I don't ever really use that anyway. So for me, the long press that you can do on the 5S, the SE, it gave me the reactions and the actions that I wanted that are available with 3D touch. So it could be that what they're doing, and again, it's because you didn't have enough time to really sit with it to know for sure, but it sounds like what they are kind of doing is they're making the long press action ka-chunk, so that it feels like it's a 3D touch reaction, even though it's actually just a long press reaction. So maybe not as many features, but still the ones that are important where it counts.
Yeah, this is an area, and a lot of people don't even care about taptics to 3D touch. I do. I love it. Like even on the Nintendo Switch, I love the idea of being able to tell there's marbles. Like tactile interfaces are compelling to me. So I really want to figure this out.
Yeah, so this is way off the subject, but sort of not. I was playing this game on my Switch last night. It's called West of Loathing, which, by the way, I highly recommend it. It's a little bit on the vulgar side, so if you are a little bit sensitive, you may not want to play it because there's a lot of cussing and stuff. It's a hilarious game, really fun. But I was playing this one scene where you flush a toilet. Again, it's pretty lowbrow humor, but I could actually feel the taptics, or the haptics, I guess they're calling that, on the Joy-Cons. It was moving from the top down as if I was like feeling the toilet flushing going down. And that's such a fun little experience to kind of like feel those kind of like maneuvers where it'd be like from the left side to the right side, or from the top to the bottom, or something like that, or shaking a little and like soft vibrations versus hard vibrations. It's kind of a fun little thing, definitely. So again, I think what I was getting at before we got kind of thrown off with the 3D touch and long press is that for most people, the 10R is a superb product because it has almost everything that the 10S and 10S Max has, except for 3D touch. The screen quality is slightly different, but not necessarily worse.
It's lower resolution and it's LCD rather than OLED.
Right, but I think we can safely have this argument that our eyes don't see in the resolution that.
I'll take it even further. I got to hold them side by side at the event, and Apple has color calibrated them so well that unless you know what to look for, you probably will not be able to tell them apart.
Right. So we're still, and the camera, and that's probably the last one that most
it's a trade-off.
People.
The battery is better on the 10R.
Right. Yeah.
Battery is actually better. The cameras were like, you don't have the two lenses. You do have depth effect, like you do have portrait mode, but only for humans. You can't take not your pets, not your coffee cup. It's only been trained for humans, sort of like what it was when the iPhone 7, when I first started. Only humans. And you don't have the 2-time optical zoom, which some people really like. You have to sneaker zoom or digital zoom like an animal.
Right. But again, if we're talking about the average person, we're not talking about professional photographers.
Yes.
We're talking about the average person. This phone is fantastic, and it comes in at
Google's Pixel phone only has one lens. So I mean, like, and that's considered, a lot of people consider it the best camera phone in the world.
Yeah. So I think it's silly for anybody to assume that this is like some sort of low quality or the cheap iPhone. I mean, price aside, it's obviously not a low priced iPhone, but
it's a less expensive iPhone.
It's not even. I wouldn't even say it's not even an entry level phone. No. It's a high quality phone that just happens to be a couple $100 less and happens to have just a couple of shortcuts that the average iPhone user won't even care about the difference of.
Yeah.
If you're upgrading from a 10S to a 10R, you're going to see the difference. But if you're upgrading from, this 8 Plus to the 10R, I think that you're still upgrading to a fantastic phone, a much better quality and much better usability, gesture-based navigation on these phones that don't have a home button. I think
AF colors.
Oh man. Oh, I know. And the colors, like we can't even go. I've been trying to convince my partner to get the 10R. He has an SE, and that was his very first smartphone. So that's fine for your very first smartphone. And I've been trying to convince him to upgrade to the 10R, and he wants black. If he gets it, he's getting it in black. And it's like, but those colors.
It is a nice black though. I mean, like the black is nice. It like the whole, because it's not stainless steel. It's sort of like the iPhone 7 matte, not the jet black, but like the matte black, which is a nice look.
So they have a glass back, right?
Yes, because they do all the inductive charging and everything.
I made a mistake on MacBreak Weekly and said, I don't think it has a glass black, and I think I was put on blast for that. So even though it has a glass back, you still see, you can kind of sense a bit of matteness to it.
I mean, like it's not jet black. Like the iPhone 7 was like that shiny jet black. This is more like the space gray. Like it's more of a charcoaly color.
Okay.
It's not matte. It is glass. So like I'm using the wrong word buckets to fill this up with, but it's a nice black. And there's an actual white. If you don't like silver white, there's an actual white.
So I'm gonna hold the iPhone 10 up to the camera for you, because my 10S is actually a white back because I have the gold one. But do you think it kind of
looks a lot like that?
Yeah. Okay. So it most likely has that. It's a nice color.
But the edges are aluminum anodized, so they're not as shiny as the stainless steel ones.
Which might be where you're seeing, or your brain is kind of representing that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, anyways, they're all dope AF. I'm going to just keep saying it until people tell me I'm too old to say it.
You're never too old to say that.
Right.
Let's see what else we have to talk about.
Anything big?
Yeah, actually, let's talk about this real quick. Adobe announcing that they're bringing, and you say in your own words, quote unquote, real Photoshop.
Yes.
Tell me why you're calling it quote unquote, because they didn't give us anything official except for that they're saying it's real, but you're thinking maybe not.
So it depends on your definition. So the minute somebody hears real Photoshop, they're going to expect it to be what they have on the desktop on their pad. And they chose it real different. They chose it real carefully. They said real Photoshop. They did not say full Photoshop. So you're going to get, so what they mean is that they've taken the Photoshop code base, the actual desktop Photoshop code base, and they have ported it over to the iPad, which apparently took 2 people. So why didn't you do it years ago? And it's going to have, I forget what they said, which subset. It's going to have a subset of features that I forget if it was for marking up or design or what it was, because Photoshop is many things to different people. It's a graphic design program, a photo retouching program, an interface design program, a 3D compositing program, an actual compositing program, a photo like there's just so many jobs that it does. And Adobe has tried to make separate products like Lightroom And I forget what the mock-up program is now called, the interface program, but they've tried to make a bunch of different programs or stuff. But a lot of people, they learn Photoshop, it's muscle memory, it's just what they go to. And Adobe is not taking the giant behemoth blob of Photoshop and just shoving it onto an iPad. They've taken a selection of features running real Photoshop code and put it on iPad. So I just wanted to make sure people understood that it's not like Photoshop Creative Cloud as they run it on their Mac or Windows machine suddenly running on iPad. It is the same code. It is just not all the same capabilities yet.
Yet.
But well, maybe I mean, we'll see where they go. Maybe they'll, I hope. And this is a hard thing. It's like, yeah, Photoshop is bloated. They should get rid of everything but this, but everybody's but this is different.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think what you're saying of it's the old dog new tricks kind of idea of, I know lots of people who consider other graphics design programs or other photo editing programs to be better, but they grew up learning Photoshop and they won't switch. They won't even try. Yeah. Because it's they need to do what they know how to do, and they can't afford the time it takes to relearn a different program. So, you know, Photoshop is here to stay. It's just a matter of, you know, how can Adobe kind of like bring that into the mobile market for people? So, what I'm thinking is, you know, we're getting the new iPad. We're hopefully getting a new iPad Pro in a week. And Photoshop for iPad isn't expected until 2019, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the new iPad Pro can support full bloated Photoshop.
It can't. So I mean, like, that's the thing, though. Is like it's like that old Jurassic Park thing. You spend so much time seeing if you could do it, you never thought whether you should do it or not. And like, I really hope that they use iPad Pro, regardless of how ridiculously powerful that A12. A12X. It is not A1210. Apple has so confused me. Can't even speak anymore. How ridiculously powerful they've made it. I hope they don't ridiculously bloat it just to do that. Like, keep it lean, mean, and hungry, and then make all your different apps for it if you have to.
Yeah, I think that would be nice. I think that it would be a poor user experience, even if it would satisfy people who want full Photoshop on iPad. It would be a bad experience for them, and then they would complain about that. So sometimes you have to, you know, make your kid eat vegetables even though they don't like vegetables.
Totally true. Lori Gill, this show was a delight. I was worried that without Micah and Georgia being ridiculously charming, charismatic, and giggly, we would have a hard time getting through this show, but I had a blast.
I did too. You know what? Let's kick them off.
That's it there.
No, wait. No.
They'll kick us off first, I think, is what will happen.
They would. The two of them alone would definitely be a better show than the two of us alone. They're way more charismatic than we are.
We did our best. We tried to drop some science, son.
Next week, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Renee. Next week we have designs to wear some costumes, and I don't want to see you without a costume next week. So,
but I have a long and illustrious history of, like, I was Gumby, damn it, on this show. So I think you have to bring your A game, Lori Gill.
Last year, didn't you dress as your Pokemon Go avatar?
I don't know. That would have. I think because I forgot it was a Halloween show, and I desperately tried to come up with some thin veneer of a costume. But we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. So if you phoned it in last year, I think that you did a good job of phoning it in, because I think I remember you were wearing it was a crocheted version of the.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the Magikarp hat.
Yeah, and that is exactly what your avatar was wearing. So, you know, I thought it worked. I thought it was a great phone-in Halloween costume. For
like, this year I have to be the goddamn Batman or something.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, good.
All right.
I'll figure it out.
It's been a great hour.
All right. So, Lori Gill, if people want to, if they did not have enough of you, if this was just like a small dose and they want the full effect, where can they go?
They can find me writing my little heart out about all things Apple on iMore. iMore.com. They can try to get in touch with me on Twitter at Appleholik, APPAHOLIK, but I spend a lot less time on the socials than I used to. I just really don't care anymore. I give up.
Lori is socially based. She's like, that's it.
Done.
That's it. Well, I mean, Georgia doesn't use it anymore either, but you could find her at Georgia_Dow if you really want to try to lure her back. You could find Micah at Micah Sargent, or just go to chihuahua.coffee for all of his links. And you can find me at iMore.com/Vector, or at Renee Ritchie, or YouTube.com/Vector Show, where I'm trying to do 4 videos a week. It's hard, Lori Gill, but I'm trying.
By the way, let me throw this out there real quick. Everybody needs to go to YouTube/Vector and Vector Show and watch the episode. Linus doesn't care about his his iPhone review. I think that's it.
iPhone XS review. Yeah.
Yeah. Go watch that video. You are going to love it, and you are going to subscribe to Renee's show if you haven't already. It's brilliant. Awesome. It's so interesting and so insightful and a little bit burning. I love it. It's great.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Lori Gill. Have a great week. And thank you all so much for joining us. You remain the absolute best community in the whole damn interverse. And that's saying a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy week, folks. And